The very back of his property was totally overgrown with bushes and shrubs, and so he figured he would just go back there and hack a bunch of it down. That morning, he rounded up all of his yard working tools and he got to work. And all day, his neighbors saw him slowly making progress as he kind of hacked his way towards the back of his property. And by the evening that night, it looked like he was almost done. 2 days later, Robert's friends were at their favorite restaurant in town waiting for Robert to show up for lunch. But Robert was running late, so one of them texted Robert to ask where he was, but he didn't get a response. After waiting for almost an hour and a half, his friends grew concerned because Robert was not the type of guy to just blow off a lunch meeting and not tell anyone where he was. And so the friends decided they would just drive by Robert's property to make sure everything was okay. But when they pulled onto a street in front of Robert's house, were fire trucks and police cars and tons of commotion, it would turn out nobody had seen or heard from Robert since 2 days earlier when he was out in his backyard. When his family had tried to get in touch with him all weekend, they hadn't been able to. And so finally, right as the lunch friends are arriving at Robert's property, Robert's own family had called the police to do a welfare check, and what they discovered was horrifying. A police officer had gone up to Robert's front door and knocked. There was no answer, the door was locked, so the officer went around to the back of the house and knocked on the back door. Again, there was no answer, but the back door was open. The officer stepped inside to just have a look around, and he went room by room, and there was nothing in there. There's no sign of a commotion or anything, and so he turns around and goes back out the back door into the yard, and he looks towards the back of the property, and he sees there's some yard working tools that are just laying on the ground, and next to it looks like there's some sort of divot in the ground. And as he got closer and closer to this divot, he saw there was a small hole in the center of this divot in the ground. And so the officer made it right up to the edge of this strange indentation on the ground, and he looked into this little hole, and then all of a sudden the ground kind of collapsed into itself, revealing a 2-foot wide hole where the small hole had been. The officer jumped back to keep from falling in, and after a few moments, he tried to shine his light down into it, but he couldn't see the bottom. It was obviously a very deep hole. And so he carefully moved forward, testing every step, and then finally he got right to the edge where he could shine his light all the way down to the bottom, 22 feet below, and there on the bottom was Robert's body. In cities, people are afraid of falling into manholes. In parts of Hawaii, people are afraid of falling into lava tubes. These tubes form during volcanic eruption. When the lava flow is flowing downstream, it begins to cool, and the exposed section of lava starts to harden and creates this sort of shell around the lava flow that's traveling underneath it. And that lava will continue to flow for months until it completely drains and leaves behind this hollowed out shell that makes this massive tube underground called a lava tube. And over time, nature just kind of reclaims the outside and inside of these lava tubes, giving the impression from the top looking down that it's just normal earth with trees and plants growing on top of it, but really underneath it is this massive underground hollowed tunnel. Robert fell through what is called a skylight, which is a small hole at the top of one of these lava tubes. Because Hawaii is known for having lava tubes all over the island, residents have to be aware of skylights. If you go off the beaten path to areas that are not particularly well trafficked, like Robert's super overgrown back part of his property, you could run into an undiscovered skylight. And experts say those skylights are difficult to identify because a lot of times the grass and the brush have kind of grown over the hole, and so you wouldn't necessarily see it. It would look like solid ground when in reality it was a death trap. Just know that I really appreciate your support, and until next time, that's going to do it. See ya.